I was a film student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 1966, and it was such an important event for me that I remember the date. It was September 22nd, and I was in my first film class. Richard Byrne was the professor, and he showed Citizen Kane. It was an introduction to film class. And before that, my goal was to become a novelist. I was a journalist from an early age, and I was planning to be a journalist and novelist, and I saw Citizen Kane, and it just knocked me out, and suddenly thought, okay, I'm going to make films, and I'm going to direct a film by the time I'm 25, like Wells did, and I'm going to write about films. It all sort of hit me at once. But I got to LA, and I went to a bookstore, and the guy who ran the bookstore knew Peter Bogdanovich, who was somebody I admired because he was doing the kind of things that I wanted to do. He was interviewing directors, and he had just made his first film, Targets, which I liked a lot. So I got his phone number and called him up, and he said, I'm on the other line with Orson, could you hold on? And I thought, wow, that's something. So then he came back and said, Orson would like to meet you. And I said, really? And he said he's in LA and he'd like you to call him tomorrow at 5:30. And he gave me the number. And in the meantime, I arranged to go to Peter's house. I don't know if it was that night or the next night, and I went to his house and pumped him for information because he knew all the inside stuff about Wells and Ford, and he was very helpful. So I called Wells from Schwab's drugstore, and the first thing he said was, we're about to start shooting a film, would you like to be in it? And I was kind of stunned because I'd never acted at all, unless you count being an altar boy when I was, that's a form of acting. Very Brissonian kind of acting. But I was stunned, and all I could think of saying was something really stupid. I said, is this going to be a feature-length film? And he laughed and said, well, we certainly hope so. And actually that turned out to be a smart question inadvertently, because it's still not a feature-length film. We're still working on trying to get this film completed, So I was playing myself, basically, spoof of myself, a film critic named Mr. Pister. And it was kind of like a Dickensian group of characters who were kind of satirical figures. And Mr. Pister was supposed to be a fanatical film buff who was following John Huston's character around, asking him typical film buff questions that were kind of arcane and absurd sometimes. And I was supposed to be writing a book on this guy. And I was pestering him with questions like Bogdanovich would do to Wells. We couldn't improvise on camera. I tried that a couple times in a very clumsy, non-actor way, and he would get mad at me for adding something. I was trying to add something unexpected, but he didn't really want that. But he would rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, and so, but he treated me in a way, he bullied me a lot. He would give me a hard time, and he was harsh when I would screw up a line, or he would be demanding and paternal and bullying. But he felt that I needed that because he wanted to keep me in a state of agitation and insecurity and nervousness, because that's what the character was. 3 years into the shooting, one of the crew members said they were watching Russia's, and I came on the screen at the drive-in scene, which we filmed on a soundstage with a lot of fog, and I was holding a tape recorder, which I carried around through the film, and Wells looked at the shot and he said, the high priest of the cinema, because I was looking like this at the screen, and he said, Joe looks good up there, but then he always looks good on screen. So the crew member told me this, and I suddenly relaxed, and this is after 3 years of being nervous. I suddenly had a good time for the next 3 years because I thought he approved of what I was doing, but he had never told me that face to face. He never said that was great or anything. He wanted to keep me wondering. So there were always things like that going on. They were a lot of fun. Wells made the set very entertaining. He believed in making the actors happy, except me, I guess. But it was fun for me too, because it was entertaining. He would tell stories, he would laugh a lot. I'd get to sit and talk to all these great people and ask them stories about their past. And it was this constant flow of young and old people there. And so the whole thing was like a party, and the food was fabulous. He had French chefs making food for us, although then the budget got low after a while and we started having pizza. But it was always, you were treated well, you worked really hard, the hours were very long. So the myth about Welles being this fat, lazy guy who just sat around and did wine commercials was completely wrong, because he was a tremendously hardworking, fast shooting director. He would work 18 hours a day and do, the first day of shooting 27 setups, tremendous speed, young crew who he kept on their toes. And I think he put me on this film partly to have a historian on the set, because he was concerned that so many people had lied and distorted about his work. He wanted somebody to really chronicle this production, and that was me. And so I've been writing about it, in my first book on Welles, and then I wrote an article about it for a magazine, and then my latest book on him, Whatever Happened to Orson Welles, A Portrait of an Independent Career, is about a third on the other side of the wind, and it's kind of a memoir/critical study.
In the book, it mentioned a deal with Showtime that possibly other side, might get put together, and all the contracts might get signed. But where does it stand now?
This is the question that people have been asking since 1970. It's now 40 years since we started shooting this film. It's kind of hard to believe that this major film of Welles's later work is not seen by the public. There are parts of it have been shown on YouTube, and the Munich Film Museum has a 30-minute condensation of the film that they show around, and so it's not like it's completely unknown, but it's all there to be finished. There's a debate about whether you should finish it in Welles's absence or just put out the parts that he edited, which is like 41 minutes, and do a making of documentary and show other footage. I think we should finish it according to the best of our understanding of his plan. But I'm sort of pessimistic, unfortunately. When I was working on the film, Mercedes McCambridge, who's a wonderful actress, told me, and she was in Touch of Evil, and she had worked with Welles in the radio, and she said, when you work with Orson, you keep your costume in a box in the attic in case you get called back for more shooting. So I took her seriously, and I'll show you. I have the costume in a box right here. This is the actual suit that I wore in the film, and my coat that I wore, the overcoat, and the whole thing is all ready to go. But I don't think I'd fit into this suit, but I keep it in a box in the attic just in case I got called back. And a few years ago in the 90s, I was asleep on my couch. It was about 9:30 in the morning, and the phone rang. It was Gary Graver, and he said, "Joe, we need you for more shooting on the other side of the wind." And I automatically said, "Okay." And he said, "I'm kidding." Jesus Christ, this is 1997 or something. But I was ready to go, because when you're working on this film, you have to be ready. Maybe I'll do some looping at some point, but if they need me back physically, they're going to have to do it with James Cameron. Will have to do some CGI work, or maybe my son could step in or something. But at least I have the costume for Cameron to create, some kind of avatar of or something.